We're back.
That was that wasn't fair. That was not. We got sabotaged by the director right at the last second.
Oh, no, that was so good.
It
I
was
mean,
not.
he brought us in smiling, and we hope you all are smiling, having a great Sunday here to watch some Pioneer on the NRG series.
That was not professional at all. We're gonna have to fire the director. Okay. Sam Beaulieu versus Vox Howland playing for a top 8 berth, we believe. Let's go down to the table.
Woo! All right, and this is going to be Izzet Phoenix versus Mono White Humans. This is actually, I mean, this is the kind of match that I'm actually very excited to see, just because you're getting to play like against a very interactive deck that is trying to kind of just go 1-for-1 with a lot of spells in the Phoenix deck, and then also this Mono White deck is anticipating decks like that and is playing things like Brave the Elements. So we're going to get to see some nice little back and forths between these decks, hopefully.
Yeah, but you know what? Brave the Elements isn't going to protect you against, Becky, that you were talking about Thing in the Ice bouncing everything.
I'm so excited. I love me a Thing in the Ice, and here it is.
There you go. But Thalia, I'm pretty sure that's a Thalia, even though that's must be the 11th different artwork of the card.
That's actually the first promo of Thalia. That's the old one, Joe.
Well, I don't recognize that one.
Oh my goodness.
Thalia.
It's a Steve Argyle one, isn't it?
Really make it hard for this Thing in the Ice to flip anytime soon.
That is definitely true. Thalia's Lieutenant as well. And Thing in the Ice is just maybe going to be a little bit sad here on the other side of the map.
I mean, at least Vox does have third land, so not going to get stuck here, but third land still only allows one spell to be cast, which is not ideal, and that's a strategic playing. That's going to cost more mana. There you go. And I mean, at least it's a strategic planning. If you're just playing an Opt or Consider here, and that effectively uses all 3 of your mana, that's rough. And notable that despite Thalia being in play on the Delve cards with Treasure Cruise and Temporal Trespass, you can delve away the Thalia cast, I believe, even though that's an interaction that doesn't come up very often. So when we get to that point, Vox will be able to potentially fire off an extra spell or else be more mana efficient than Thalia would normally, seems like it would allow.
All right, now we just have some decisions. This Mutavault has an extra counter on it. Could be ready to rumble here. But instead is going to be used to cast a Luminarch Aspirin, which will trigger the Thalia's Lieutenant to get an extra counter. And an 0-4 Thing in the Ice is only going to be able to block like one of these. And let's see exactly how we decide.
So a counter on Thalia gets through for 4 probably. If you put the counter on the on the Guardian, I gotta be more specific. If you put the counter on the Lieutenant, then you only get through for 3. But this way, you're a turn away from Thalia surviving all the burn spells except for Lightning Axe. So there's definitely some considerations there for Sam. That's not an obvious choice.
Yeah. Making these land drops at least for Vox, so feeling pretty okay about that. But unfortunately, is having to spend 2 mana for an opt, which is probably not exactly what you would want to do. And this Thalia not being able to be pushed off the board quite so quickly, it's got to be really annoying for this Phoenix deck.
Yeah, still this Thing in the Ice. So think for a moment in comparison to Ledger Shredder, which a lot of the early Phoenix decks played and some still do. This Arclight would be potentially looted into the graveyard, but more damage would be coming through because the Shredder would be less able to block and also not be an eventual answer to this growing board state. So I think that's looking pretty good here as long as Vox can survive long enough to be able to flip it and a Brutal Cathar doesn't come down. And I spy a couple more Thalias in hand. That's not ideal.
Not ideal at all. And there's a Brave the Elements. I'm unable to make out the final card. And yeah, you certainly do have to be a little bit worried. You want to commit more creatures to the board. You want to be trying to get damage across, but it is difficult to be working towards that when you are staring down a thing in the ice on the other side of the board that just says, why don't you go ahead and play a bunch more things? I'll just make it more difficult for you later.
Yeah, this is it's gonna be problematic for Sam, and it doesn't look like there's any guarantee or any likelihood that Sam's gonna be able to finish this game before the thing in the ice flips, which could happen next turn.
Ooh, all right. Looks like we're gonna activate the Mutavault.
Mm-hmm. I like the Mutavault coming in here. If there's nothing else to be done, Mutavault is something you're not going to necessarily want. Actually, I take it back. I was going to say you don't want the Mutavault to get bounced, but that actually can't happen because the Mutavault is a horror.
It's true. You only bounce non-horror creatures.
All right, so looks like something around 10
9.
damage gets in there. Is it 9? Okay, you're correct. And opt end step, and Thing the Ice goes down to 1. So Vox Holland ready to go. Thing the Ice can now, although easily block Mutavault.
We do have a Brave the Elements in hand that could stop that from being a possibility, but we also have to hope that then our opponent, now that our Thalia is going to be wiped off the board, won't have some kind of counter spell or something to say. Otherwise, as I believe I also see a Lightning Axe in hand.
Mm-hmm. So the question there for Vox, well, at least there is a question of, do I bounce this? Do I flip this now or wait until combat potentially on Sam's turn? Decision made to go now. This will allow some spells to be cast here without Thalia on the board. So this is really the window to get some work done. We see removal spells in hand, and Awoken Horror comes across for 7.
Whoa.
No interest in hanging back to block the Mutavault.
Yeah, if that doesn't give away that there's some kind of removal spell in hand, I don't know if I know what does.
Brave doesn't work with... Well, okay, Brave would not protect a Mutavault. That is correct. So a Lightning Axe will pick it off on an attack here. Even if a Thalia came down first, if Sam had a land to play Thalia first and then animate and go in there, it's still not going to work. And Sam is likely aware of that. Seeing the Awoken Horror come across, is definitely going to make Mr. Beaulieu here aware that Vox has got something cooking.
Yeah, I think you kind of just have to go for deploying a lot of these Thalias over and over again. And just, like, you have 3 in hand. We've got to start just, like, getting them down. You know that your opponent likely has a removal spell and just start to, like, whittle through those. Because if the Izzet Phoenix deck is allowed to just, like, have a turn unhindered by any other... by a Thalia, it seems really scary to me, especially if Vox was feeling confident enough to go ahead with that Awoken Horror attack.
Yeah. Sam really hurting for mana here. Not able to redevelop the board as much as you might like. And is that the Giant Killer? Is that the tapper?
Giant Killer.
Yeah, it is. All right, so that was the 1 mana play. That gets killed by the Lightning Axe. Vox ready to get aggressive here. 1 Phoenix in the graveyard, I think. So no lethal attack available yet. Strategic planning. All right. Vox also playing a Singleton Crackling Drake. Not something we see in every list. Well, there's Temporal Trespass.
Okay.
So I actually thought to myself, it's interesting that Vox attacked before playing strategic planning, but that may have been an effort to convince Sam to not block.
And yeah, all of a sudden with an extra turn, some fixing in hand, has a second Phoenix as well. So if we can figure out a way to get this Phoenix out of hand, there's a possibility. But a lot of the cards in our hand actually look really clunky. There's another thing in the ice, a Treasure Cruise, that Phoenix, and I believe a strategic planning or a Fable of the Mirror Breaker.
Yeah. So I think the ice plus Fable would give 2 blockers. I mean, that seems pretty safe. Also, importantly, 2 blockers that are different colors. Yeah, here's a swing. Forced block. Yeah, all right. It's going to be Thing the Ice and Fable. All right. So Vox Holland set up pretty well. I'd be pretty astonished if Sam is able to break through her defenses at this point.
I'm in agreement with you, but we'll see. The 4 Thalia, the draw.
A 4 of a kind is really good in some games. Is it not? It's not
That
working?
not in this game.
No. Okay.
Not in this game. Well, sometimes in this game, not with that creature in particular.
Yeah. Four copies of a legend, not so good. There's a blue lane line that turns off the legend rule, right? I mean,
I think
that
so,
would help.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's also 2 blue ley lines, and they're different. I've always thought that they were the same, and then somebody recently was like, no, they printed a second blue lane line. There's different ones. Because somebody asked me, they were like, do you have a blue lane line for trade? And I was like, oh, yeah, totally. And I pulled it out, and they were like, this is not the one that I wanted. And I was like, there's a different one?
That's such rotten luck. If you're actually find someone to trade a blue ley line from you, and you don't even have the one they want. Yeah, the other blue ley line gives everything flash. I actually played against it last week in Pioneer.
Whoa!
I played against Blue Devotion, and they started game 1 with turn 0 blue ley line, and I was like, let me read that. Hold up.
Yeah. Wait, that's actually kind of sick. I kind of like that. Can you ask, who is your opponent? Can I get their list? That's kind of, I want to know.
Yeah, it was.
Nobody playing that today?
Dude, that person was playing. If no one's playing Lotus Field today that we can find, then we're certainly not going to find, which is what I want. We're not going to find go out of our way to find anyone playing Blue Devotion for you. I mean,
that's fair. I'll accept that.
I mean, it's just maybe that's not very sporting, but hey, if I can't get what I want, then you can't have it either. All right, here's a Treasure Cruise.
We're cruising.
For Vox for 3 mana, leaving the Phoenixes in the graveyard, hoping to potentially bring them back. Drawing another Treasure Cruise, that's not going to help.
We have a Consider.
Okay.
1 mana spell. We're going to bounce our Goblin.
That's okay. It's a cost Vox is probably willing to play in order to win the game.
Honestly, that's fair. Charter Course. Actually, we won't even. We'll go down to 1 counter. The Goblin can stay.
All right, the Goblin can stay, and the Phoenixes will fly overhead and take down the game. So Vox Holland up a game, playing for. I actually didn't take note of the players' records. I assume they're both 5-1. But so playing for a top 8 berth here. Let's go ahead and take the deck list. Vox Holland playing. Okay, we'll start with Sam Beaulieu's deck.
This is pretty close to the one that we were actually just seeing. The only big difference that I can note is we're playing a 1-of Portable Hole in the main. I believe the other one that we were watching also wasn't playing 3 copies of Giant Killer / Chop Down. So that is a pretty big difference. And I think I actually like that inclusion. I think the Giant Killer can be a pretty sweet card. I think 3 copies might be a little bit too much, but I would be willing to concede that fact. If you're playing against a lot of mono green devotion, Giant Killer being a part of it actually sounds like probably a really great decision. And considering that 15% of the metagame here today was that mono green devotion list, I can respect the choice to go ahead with 3 Giant Killer.
Okay. Sideboard cards of note. There are 2 copies of Rest in Peace. Those are going to be good.
Winners.
Yeah. Ray Dawn can make the Delve cards cost more. I'm not sure that that's necessarily worthwhile. So there's not, I don't think, a whole lot that needs to be done here. Maybe Portable Hole for Thing in the Ice.
I was kind of wondering the same thing, especially because the Thing in the Ice was what that game kind of revolved around. That first one, at least, being able to take out a lot of the creatures that Sam had committed to the board. Once again, this mono white deck is really looking to have like 3-4 lands kind of tops. If you have 5 and are able to go a 3-drop and a 2-drop, you're like, cool, but you're really not looking to have a ton of lands. And that makes a lot of things get really gummed up into your hand if they're ever returned. So you're definitely not too happy to see something like a Thing in the Ice come into play. So maybe, depending on how scared Sam is of that, that could be something. But it does seem like you don't want to like overload on a card like that.
All right, let's take a moment, look at Vox Howland's Blue-Red Phoenix deck. Thing in the Ice, Arclights, a Fable, and a Crackling Drake. Not exactly the I don't know that there is a stock list of Izzet Phoenix at this point, so I'm not gonna say this is the stock list because that's not a fair way of phrasing it because there isn't one. Some have Ledger Shredders, some have varying numbers of Thing in the Ice. Fable and Crackling Drake, not present in every list either. So certainly some choices to make. And one Temporal Trespass. I know a lot of lists have two, but there are 4 crews and 1 Temporal Trespass here. What looks appealing in the board? Well, Anger the Gods.
Yeah, I was going to say, once again, you kind of mentioned it earlier, actually, when you cast Vox, or one of the previous commentators did, that there was just that one copy of Anger of the Gods, and it was something that Vox kind of struggled with or wasn't able to wipe the board. Young Pyromancer, probably going to be great just to make sure that you have blockers along with the rest of these. This does look a little bit difficult. The Abrades also probably win just because you're looking to make sure that you have a lot of removal spell for some of those smaller creatures before they can get a little bit too out of hand.
Perhaps. Now, something, if Vox, and we'll see what happens this game and how it may impact game 3. If a Rest in Peace comes into play and Vox doesn't have the Young Pyromancers and Crackling Drake boarded in, they may be more likely to come in the third game after seeing that, because all of these sideboard options are not, locked in stone. There's probably no guarantee that Rest in Peace is going to be there or how many numbers. Just like it might be hard for Sam to board Portable Holes against Thing in the Ice because there's no guarantee how many Thing in the Ices are actually present in Vox's deck. Having seen the second one at the end of the game may kind of tip the scales in that favor, but don't actually know.
Yeah, certainly ends up being a little bit back and forth on that decision making, and I think it also is, you kind of mentioned it, the Izzet Phoenix deck has been around for a long time. People have played a lot of different versions of it, so it's hard to call one thing in particular a stock list of it. And I think that that's where you start to get very tripped up on, like, well, do I bring in Portable Hole because I'm scared of Thing in the Ice and Young Pyromancer, but what if there just aren't that many of those creatures?
Okay, it looks like someone reached in for Vox's deck. I wonder if a sleeve was broke. I don't know what just happened there. Actually, maybe that's Sam's deck. I don't know what just happened there. Anyway, they're shuffling up for game 2. And we'll get things rolling. Young Pyromancer, so most of the, obviously there's the Phoenixes and Young Pyromancers versus Thing Nice. So it's nice to have a mix of colors because of Brave the Elements. So you don't get, Alpha Struck out of existence. Can I say Alpha? Because everyone says Alpha Strike. I'm going to Alpha Strike, but Alpha Struck would be right. I could say that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, okay.
But so it's nice to have, I also say like Smote. And people constantly tell me that smote isn't a word. Smote is a word in traditional English. So anyway, that's for a different game. It smote, does not have relevance to this game.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of like, people will be like, oh, it should be smited. And it's like, first of all, that sounds silly.
You're right. Smote sounds so much better. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'll give you that one. That makes sense. All right. So we've got Thing in the Ice providing early defense.
Ooh.
And there's a Brutal Cathar to knock it out of the way.
Yeah, I was going to be like, we're a little bit worried about something like that Thing in the Ice, but a nice quick answer means that we won't have to worry about it too much.
Okay. Consider to prevent this Brutal Cathar from flipping, which is something that's desirable. You don't necessarily want to let that happen. And let's see if there's another player for Vox Howland. There probably is. All right. Yep.
Ooh.
Izzet Charm takes down Brutal Cathar. And Thing in the Ice returns.
Good old Izzet Charm.
Yeah, that card's been around a long time.
It's been around a long time. Taken out of popularity because of newer Izzet cards, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's efficient. Well, it's most efficient as a removal spell. If you cast it as the draw effect, obviously you're down a card, but as a counter or the removal spell, good enough. Here's an Adeline. Ooh. Adeline and Thalia's Lieutenant are pretty good together.
Unfortunately, this Thalia's Lieutenant... Oh, does it make a human? Is Thalia's Lieutenant going to get another counter when the token comes into play?
Well, Sam doesn't have... You saw him look in his box. Didn't have.
He doesn't have one.
I don't think you get to have a token if you don't have the right one. Oh, I guess coverage is going to offer it to him. Okay. Anyway, so tokens him to play. Thalia's Lieutenant cracks him for 4 already. And Vox has got some work to do here. Thing in the Ice is going to set up for next turn.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Bunch of cantrips here. Graveyard getting filled up. And I believe we have a land drop coming here. Whether it's a tap land or not, we will see. Vox decides 2 life points are worth more than cantripping this turn.
Honestly, when you're staring down an Adeline, I don't disagree.
No, me neither. But there are 2 sizable creatures in play right now with this Thalia's Lieutenant, which is growing very quickly, and the Adeline itself, which is doing its Keldon Warlord impression, going to be up to a 5/5 already. So Thing in the Ice.
6/6. Because when Adeline attacks, we get an extra counter from the new human.
Right. Yeah, so Lieutenant, a 6/6, Adeline, a 5/5. Vox can block a Vox cannot block a token to live because the second token is attacking. Yeah. Thing in the Ice has to chump block here. This is going to be rough.
Yeah, this is certainly a little bit spooky and unfortunate that Thing in the Ice kind of just has to bite the dust here.
Yes. So hard to recover here. Anger of the Gods, not going to do much. It would kill everything except Thalia's Lieutenant, actually, but that's not enough.
Yeah, actually not being able to kill this Thalia's Lieutenant at this point seems like a pretty big downside, which...
Yeah, I mean, Lightning Axe can't even kill it.
No, yeah, we're on a turbo flip Thing in the Ice or bust kind of at this point.
That's a bad spot to be in when the Thing in the Ice died. Yeah, and that's very fast and efficient. Sam Beaulieu just crushes Vox that game. So we're going to see game 3.
Being on the play really helps for these mono white humans decks. I mean, I feel like that's where we've seen them, like, and maybe there's like something that like the decks they just know. They're like, oh, we're on the play this game, so we're going to give you the better cards to win on the play as well. Because every single time they're on the play, they just seem so much more impressive, which I think is both a function of the decks are aggro decks. They're meant to be impressive on the play, as well as just how they've been drawn up on screen for us today. But I do think that I'm a little bit more of a fan of Sam Beaulieu's version of the list. I think I like the addition of the giant killers. I like that we're playing a little bit more safe cards in the main board. We are not playing Cave of the Frost Giant. That makes me a little sad. I think the Cave of the Frost Giant's a really great creature land. And it's a creature land that taps for white, which ends up kind of mattering, whereas Mutavault sometimes doesn't.
Aren't you mislabeling? Didn't we decide it was Cave of the Frost Dragon?
Oh, I am saying it.
Well, maybe
Dragon.
That's why I mean, if you're gonna misname it, maybe that's why Sam wasn't interested in playing it. It doesn't get the respect it deserves, obviously.
I'm so sorry. You're totally right.
Also, not getting the respect it deserves. I misspoke there. I was thinking Adeline momentarily. It's power and toughness for the number of creatures you have in play. It's just power.
Yeah.
So Adeline would have survived Anger of the Gods as well. So not that it mattered, but yeah, I did say that incorrectly.
Yeah, I mean, once again, only one copy of Anger of the Gods. I understand that like this Izzet deck is trying to draw a ton of cards, but it seems scary. Usually the decks that you want Anger of the Gods against, you want an Anger of the Gods. You don't want to go a game like that where you just like don't see it. So it seems like a little scary to me that we wouldn't be playing multiple copies of it in the sideboard, but I also have not played a lot of the Izzet Phoenix deck. The most Izzet Phoenix I played was in Modern, probably 3 years ago now, checks watch. So this is a very different situation from that.
All right, well, we'll see here what gets going. And maybe this Anger of the Gods, maybe it's even, well, going second, when there's Thalia on the board, it may be too slow. So we'll see. I mean, did it even get boarded in? I mean, it feels hard to imagine that it didn't, but it's possible it didn't. I guess there's no real way to find out unless it's drawn. But yeah, speaking of 3 years ago since you played Arclight Phoenix in Modern, Becky, Season 2 qualifiers start next week. Are you playing? You going to be out there?
Yeah, I think this time I'll actually try.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. I re-downloaded Moto on my computer since my computer broke like a few months ago, and I just was like, this was actually kind of healthy because it got me to like not have a lot of things that were distractions for me downloaded. But I re-downloaded it this week, and I think that that's going to be my shift into really starting to kind of change getting ready for tournaments.
Okay, well, you should show up next Saturday to the first. It's a 2-slot qualifier. Since I'm going to win,
somebody's got to take the second place.
Yeah, but it's still worth coming because you can still pick up the invite. So
That's
yeah, you
true.
should definitely show up.
All right.
All right.
Joe Lissette and I are going to be at this event. If you're in Southern California for a chance to play against us, be there or be square.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Young Pyromancer in play. Kithian and Luminarch Aspirant on the other side of the board. So Young Pyromancer is going to want to do as much work as it can before Thalia comes down. And, well, I guess Thalia obviously not in hand here. Lightning Axe prepared, but Vox Holland, yeah, going to be able to assemble an army of blockers here. Maybe attackers, but most certainly blockers to make things more difficult for Sam Beaulieu to avoid a repeat of last game.
Yeah, this is going to be a very, very different situation, as you mentioned. And at least this Kithian's here and is going to hopefully be able to flip kind of soon. This Rest in Peace that's in hand for Sam, though, that's where I'm really starting to kind of change my attention.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a problem. Is this... So Lightning Axe will take down Luminarch Aspirant. Another token. Is this Phoenix coming back?
Don't think so.
All right. Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. It is.
I thought so. Yeah.
Okay.
So this Phoenix is in play. I don't think any of those tokens are able to attack, but Pyromancer can, and it should.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Vox Holland across for 5 damage. So Rest in Peace. Sam had Rest in Peace ready to go. What waited for your if you were correct that's in the hand. I didn't see it myself, but I mean if you have it and you don't play it in turn 2 and you're like, it's turn 3 is fine. Well, not this time. And
yeah.
Okay. And now it's
not even worth playing.
Yeah.
And we've got all these elementals. Our attacking force is already assembled in the air. We don't care. Yeah. Throw them under the bus.
Yeah. How much can Vox get done here before the graveyard gets destroyed by Rest in Peace? And how many tokens can be made? Well, all the cantrips are great now. Cantrip into cantrip is fine. Each one makes a token. Attacking on the ground is not going to be more difficult. I suppose Pyromancer could attack into Adeline and Izzet Charm could finish it off, but that doesn't seem great, does it?
No, it does not. Instead, it looks like we're just still trying to kind of turbo through the deck and be able to at least finish off maybe... I mean, you gotta imagine you're maybe looking for just like another Lightning Axe or something to be able to just like cleanly answer it. But instead, we're just gonna have Air Forces still coming across strong in the form of that Arclight Phoenix and the ground locked down by Young Pyromancer. And this Izzet Phoenix deck is just like buzzing this game.
Yeah, still, it's gonna take, 4 turns to, well, okay, scratch that. As now there's actually a blocker in the air. And Adeline comes across for an attempted big chunk of damage. Gets blocked again. Soldier trades with Young Pyromancer wakes humans, maybe? I'm not even sure about that.
Elementals.
I should have known that. Cruise is great for Vox Holland here. Being able to use up her graveyard before the Rest in Peace comes down. Not that she would even be concerned about Rest in Peace here, because how often does your opponent have Rest in Peace and hold it? But that is... I'm not going to say it's a mistake. That's just what the board has suggested Sam do. But
yeah, I was going to say
would have benefited him, and it's kind of late now.
Yeah, the one turn that was like the turn to play the Rest in Peace, like all of a sudden the door has closed, and it just like has not been the right time. There's not been another Phoenix in the yard. There's not been really a whole lot that you want to handle. The Selfless Spirit is hanging around, and there is that Adeline that we could answer with this Lightning Axe now, but with that Selfless Spirit in play, I like the decision to just Crackling Drake instead.
Interesting. Yeah, that's tough, because Selfless Spirit trading with Sam knows he has Rest in Peace in hand, so Selfless Spirit trading with Arclight will kill it for all time. But yeah, Crackling Drake doesn't care about Rest in Peace, and it's big already.
Yeah, Crackling Drake also, has that really cool exile wording.
Yeah.
When I first read that wording, when that card was printed, I was like, oh, they threw us a bone here. Thanks, Wizards.
That works well. Okay, Selfless Spirit targeted by Dauntless Bodyguard. That explains the lack of blocking that turn, so Selfless Spirit can stick around. But as Vox has very conveniently demonstrated for us with that blue die there, Crackling Drake currently is 6 power. Sam only at 9.
Yeah, and choosing just to get in with Adeline. Has Vigilance, so why not try and gets across for 1, but even still, finally using that Rest in Peace. But for all intents and purposes, that Rest in Peace at this point in the game just doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, Vox didn't even flinch when that came down.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, if there's a removal spell, I guess it would have to be. No, I take that back. This Selfless Spirit is just not dying this turn. All right, there is a Izzet Charm on the Selfless Spirit. Well, maybe it's dying. Yep, it's just gonna get nailed twice.
Dying.
Yeah,
we also have a lightning axe in hand.
Yeah, and that's it. Vox Holland clears the air. Crackling Drake and Arclight Phoenix crash across, and Vox Holland is going to advance to the top 8.
Yeah, that last game was. Somebody in chat was also like, play draw just matters a lot in this format, and the way that we just watched those games happen, I'm certainly just in total utter belief of it, and also just any game where the Izzet Phoenix gets to get a turn 3 Phoenix, you're just like, this is an easy game for babies. And all of a sudden, I'm just running through everything. Not to mention being able to go Young Pyromancer on turn 2 and then have my turn 3 where I just get Phoenix back is just like such a crazy, insane turn 2 into turn 3 that it would be difficult for pretty much any deck to handle.
Right, right. And people, I mean, people saying, oh, well, going first matters. I mean, the same comments are made, I think, in every format.
Yeah, no,
so
very true. Somebody else made the comment like, "Oh, wow, surprise, going first matters." But
it's something, you know, that you have to deal with in every format, and certainly it is helpful, especially when there's taxing effects. Although that game, there was no Thalia present, but the Rest in Peace just didn't make it into play. If it had been played on turn 2.
I mean, the Young Pyromancer would have still been like such a problem.
Yeah.
But it would have at least given play to the humans player.
Right,
but it's so hard to make that decision because you do like so often the Izzet Phoenix deck has to wait realistically until turn 4 or 5 to be able to get a Phoenix back into play. So you feel like you have more wiggle room in being able to get yourself into a position where you are, instead of committing to the board with creatures, committing to taking down your opponent's state on the board or in the graveyard, and it feels really, really bad to have it kind of shake up that way.
I mean, it's great if your opponent goes pieces of the puzzle and you're like, oh, cool, rest in peace, undo all the work you just did. But yeah, that was not the way Vox had it drawn up that game, as it was just, I mean, a flurry, Arclight into play on turn 3, and then Treasure Cruise was on turn 4, I think, and that was just an overwhelming amount of effort, of just resources being used there. And we do have Vox Holland in the booth, so let's go ahead and bring her in. Hey, all right. Well, that match, we had 3 games that were pretty brutal, going, you know, back and forth. You want to take us through that?
Yeah, definitely. Game 1, I was super worried that I was just gonna get killed on the crackback with the Mutavault that was pretty close to just lethaling me on its own.
Yeah.
I can't remember if Brave the Elements only gives white creatures protection.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that last turn there, I played the extra thing in the ice and the Fables to make sure I had 2 colors of blockers.
Right. No. That was, we talked about that. That having 2 colors was a really, it made you seem very safe on that last turn.
Definitely. I was in the tank for a bit there on whether I should just play the Phoenix from my hand or try something else, but it seemed like a really safe line and have lethal on the next turn.
And then game 2, you just got blown out of the water.
Yeah, game 2 was rough. Kept a hand with a piece of removal and just got ran over.
That's how it goes sometimes.
The 4 toughness creatures can be really hard to deal with if I don't draw my axes.
Yeah. So did the Anger of the Gods come in, or do you not? Yeah, it did. Okay.
Yeah, I boarded in Anger, the 2nd Crackling Drake, 2 Abrades, and the 2 Young Pyromancers. And
Makes
Pyromancer
sense.
was a card that originally, like, when I was looking at my sideboard, I wasn't thinking of it, but then I was like, oh man, I could just like chump block forever, trade with some of their X ones. This seems great. And they have like so little removal for it.
Very true. And it ended up actually making a pretty big difference in multiple situations there as well. All right, I have to ask, is there another deck that you were thinking about playing aside from Izzet Phoenix, or have you just been like, Izzet Phoenix is the deck for me? Because I'm always interested when people especially make it to this point in the tournament where they're like, am I still thinking about this other deck, or what, am I like, nah, I made the right choice, this was great?
So this is actually the first I've played Pioneer since Underworld Breach was banned.
Okay, so
I
that takes us back a while.
Yeah, I've played Lotus Field a bit,
Yes!
but didn't really care for any of the current lists.
No!
They're decent. They're decent. But also like against the green decks, if they Damping Sphere, like you have to find a Boseiju immediately, or you just lose. And I didn't want to play against mono green every round when I'm not super familiar with the format.
Sure.
And Phoenix with Treasure Cruise, who needs Faithless Looting?
Yeah. So how close to the ideal was your game 3 development there? Because it seemed pretty great.
Yeah, it was pretty good. The Young Pyromancer was clutch. Just having a ton of cantrips and removal spells to just churn out 1/1s.
All right. And Vox Howland into top 8. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we will see you in the bracket then this evening, and we'll see who your paired up against. Maybe we'll have you back on camera again, but good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you.
All right. So, Becky Bell, I don't know if we have a backup match for this round or not, but we know one player in top 8.
Very true. We also maybe know a few more, but I'm going to save myself potentially being wrong and not commit to vocally saying any of them, but at least getting to see how one player made it is very nice in this round. And we are... Huh?
Can we just talk for a moment about how she liked Lotus Field deck pre-banning and then has abandoned it? I mean, I almost feel like there was some conspiracy setting this up to just blast me. Oh, Lotus Field is the deck. Come on.
I think you're like the only person who feels
Apparently,
that way about Lotus Field.
I guess. I mean, yeah. Oh well. All right.
I also actually recently so I've been organizing all of my Magic cards. If people were listening to coverage yesterday, I talked about it a little bit as well. And I found like the pieces of my mono green ramp list from like way back when Pioneer first started to even be a thing. And there was Damping Sphere in it. And my fiance goes, "Why is there a Damping Sphere in your ramp deck? And you're like Forsaken Gods deck or like lands deck." And I was like, "Oh, well, because when I played against Lotus Field, like you needed Damping Sphere anyway, or you were just dead to them." So it's a little counterintuitive. And then it was actually funny that Vox actually mentioned that as well. Like sometimes you just like can't handle Damping Sphere even if your opponent is playing it.
All right, we do have a backup match. Let's go ahead and get that rolling. See if we've got another player we can add to the top 8 here. Lance Schultz versus Will Kowalczyk. Bant Humans versus Rakdos Tokens. Okay, 2 players at 5-1. This is round 7. Ignore what you see on the graphic there. And we'll get this underway. All right, so Becky, you have the deck lists on your monitor there. So what are we going to see in Bant Humans that's different from Mono White, aside from presumably Collected Company?
Yeah, it's pretty much all creatures plus Collected Company. So we're getting to see quite a few things that are different. Something that stays the same is we are having 1 copy of Kithian Hero of Akros.
Okay.
You're getting to play things like Elite Spellbinder as well. So you're playing a little bit more utility creatures than the Humans deck is. The Humans deck is trying to commit as like much power and toughness to the board, whereas this deck is a lot more trying to play around with things. The interesting thing to me is that you're playing like Experiment 1, which is a pretty cool creature with Evolve that you're trying to kind of level up with a lot of these bigger humans to go along with it. Things like Werewolf Pack Leader, that's just like a very strong 2-mana 3/3 creature. And then good old Reflector Mage. We're basically going back to Cons of Tarkir in a way.
All right, so we got, it says black-red tokens for Will Kowalczyk, but it's basically the black-red mid-range deck that's kind of one of the powerhouse decks of the format. So we'll see how this is able to handle the Adeline was dispatched, no problem. And we'll see how this goes here as the players develop.
Liliana of the Veil. My brain did like a little double take. I'm still not used to Liliana existing in a format that isn't like modern. Because in the time that I've played, Liliana was always just like the modern card.
Right. Well, maybe now it's the Pioneer card. It's certainly, I mean, both these 2 cards really has changed the black-red deck dramatically. Liliana of the Veil and Shieldred we're both grindy, taxing cards on whatever the opponent's trying to do here. Padding the life total, draining the opponent, and then just, I mean, I don't know how many Liliana ultimates we're going to see, but just the ability to just kind of mess with your opponent a little bit.
This is a
Okay, well, that's not
oh.
ideal for Will. Would have preferred to blood that away, but of course, he would have no way of knowing that Lance is empty-handed.
Well, now we know because Lance just showed us.
Mm-hmm.
And Shieldred, certainly not the creature that you want to be facing down when
when you're stuck.
Yeah. So
well, I guess Lance wasn't really stuck. There was plenty of mana to cast all the cards and spells that he didn't draw. That was really the issue, I guess. Yeah, and that was pretty one-sided. All right, we have some sideboards, we have some deck lists. Let's take a look at what may go differently. Lance Schultz, Bant humans. So like Becky was saying, you can see some overlap with the mono white deck, but we do have Experiment 1, we do have Werewolf Pack Leader, and we do have, maybe most importantly, Collected Company.
Yeah, and the reason that I'm saying we're going back to cons is just like anytime I see Collected Company with Reflector Mage, like that's just immediately what I think of is that standard format where Reflector Mage actually ended up biting the dust, got banned as a result of being a little bit too strong with some of these other creatures as well. And, you know, this is just like a solid package. You're just trying to both have a little bit of toolboxing between that like Elite Spellbinder and the Charming Prince, as well as do some blinking both of your creatures and of your opponent's creatures with the Reflector Mage in there as well, whilst getting a ton of power and toughness onto the board with Experiment 1 and Werewolf Pack Leader.
All right, let's take a look at Will Kowalczyk's Black-Red deck, see how it may differ from the stock lists. We see kind of the standard creature set, Graveyard Trespasser and Kalidas, cards that we used to see in higher numbers, I believe. And now there's been some suggestions on Twitter from notable players I've seen. They were suggesting, you know what, maybe you shouldn't be playing any of these because the other cards are just better. We do see the full set of Dreadbores, so that's something that there were Eliminates getting, you know, played occasionally before, but now it's just all Dreadbores all the time. Why not? If you have the ability to kill a Planeswalker, you might as well do it.
Yeah, and this is interesting because earlier on coverage, somebody had mentioned that previously, like, Kalidas was a card that was getting played a whole lot, and now since Shieldred has come into play, that's kind of been a bigger replacement for your big, high-end black creature that you're trying to gather some card advantage and board advantage with.
All right. So certainly some removal options as Black-Red in any format is always going to have. Extinction Event, maybe iffy was to whether you want that or not. Your opponent's going to have more odds than you, but I'm still not sure you're even going to bother with that. But Rending Volley, Noxious Grasp, probably going to be able to kill a sizable portion of the opposing creatures. We may see copies of those. Anyway, let's go ahead and get game 2 rolling. See how this plays out. Will Kowalczyk winning game 1 in a very decisive fashion.
Yeah, mulligan this time for Lance, and we'll hope that it's a little bit better than the previous hand and going to be a little bit stronger, and we're going to take a look at it pretty quickly here.
I don't know if there's another land there.
No, there is. There's the...
Oh, you're right.
There's at least one unclaimed territory.
Yes, you are correct. All right, so we have Reflector Mage, I think Thalia's Lieutenant, and a couple Werewolf Pack Leaders. That's actually a pretty solid start, even on 6 cards.
No, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, Werewolf Pack Leader, just anytime you get to cast it on turn 2 and you're like, here's my 3/3. Also, it gets bigger. Have fun.
Yeah, I think taking a Pack Leader here makes some sense for Will. But we'll see what he chooses.
Does feel a little bit bad to take the one card that they have 2 copies of, but at the end of the day, if that's the card that you're the most afraid of, that's the card that you're most afraid of, and this Thoughtseize is basically a kill spell.
All right, so there is the other one into play. Unclaimed territory naming humans, as I'm sure it always does. I need to ask the table spotter. I can just assume. Also, I guess since the probably didn't name werewolf, here is Thalia's Lieutenant. So there is 5 power total into play. So if Lance is able to play another human at next turn and attack, that will net a card. As Apollo takes offense to something.
Oh, he's cheering on the Werewolf Pack Leader.
I see. Right, that makes sense. Sense. All right, Bone Crusher trying to take that Thalia.
Yeah, speaking of reasons why you would maybe be afraid of the Werewolf Pack Leader if you have a Stomp, but actually we have the Dreadbore as well. No problems here.
Yeah, and there was another Thalia's Lieutenant, so with no interaction whatsoever, Lance was looking primed to draw cards here off the pack leader, but instead, well, Will has kind of already established dominance over the board.
Mm-hmm.
Made somewhat easier by your opponent mulling, but even so, this is lining up very well for what Will brought to the table.
Yeah, and Thalia's Lieutenant, the second one actually drawn, so kind of giving away that we drew an extra one after our hand was revealed from this Thoughtseize. And off of no spells cast on Lance's turn, unfortunately, we do flip over. Werewolves. You get a werewolf, you get a werewolf. We all get werewolves, but mine is attacking and dealing a lot of damage.
Yes, it is. That's coming across for 6 this turn, as well as Will's gaining 2 damage. Here's another Thoughtseize. See if Lance has found anything. Well, yes, there's 3.
Oh no! Oh,
yeah.
I'm so hurt for Lance. Oh wow! Yikes!
Yeah. Okay. So Bone Crusher in Adventure Zone summoned into play by Mr. Kowalczyk, and now a 4/4. And actually, I should switch that back to day, but it doesn't matter. Lance Schultz, I'm sure, had impressive performances in several other rounds today. Obviously, putting up 5 and 1, but got smashed here in round 7, playing for top 8. Will Kowalczyk advances on. Not much to say about that. That was pretty one-sided.
That's pretty, I mean, it's pretty one-sided, but it's also like one-sided because of just like you get flooded in one game, you get screwed in another game, and like all things considered, like I think pretty much everyone would have kept that second hand that Lance kept. That was 2 lands, able to cast most of the creatures in Lance's beginning hand. Just ended up drawing 3 cards that we couldn't cast in no lands.
No.
So an unfortunate end to the tournament there.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so that is going to conclude our coverage of the Swiss. We've got the top 8 incoming. We've got leaderboard factors being played out. So let's put the day 2 leaderboard, the season 2 leaderboard back up, and we'll kind of give you, if I can have that information back on what's going on with our players in contention. We have got Zach Dubin at 5 and 2 today. We have Scott Pulera at 4 and 3. So that puts the two of them very close together. Zach Dubin would finish above Scott Pulera. However, Larry Fields in the 8th spot is in the top 8, most likely. And if he wins the event, he will grab the season 2 points invite alongside Jesse Robkin. So Larry Fields with a lot to play for as the day goes on. Everyone playing for points, for money, for the DreamHack invite. Larry Fields also playing for the Rage Championship invite. So I'm sure Zach Dubin will be watching very carefully to see how that plays out. Anyway, we'll be back in a little while for the top 8. We'll have a bracket. We'll show you who made it, what decks made it. Becky and I will talk through the bracket, what we think is going to win, and then, send new players into action, and then on their way out of here. Comment from the chat. So Jesse Robkin did make it. So, okay, let me back up a second. There are 2 spots for the season 2 leaderboard that are going to qualify. Jesse has already locked up the first one. The winner today gets 20 points, and you can see she has more than a 20-point lead on Scott, Zach, and Josh. So Jesse has grabbed one of the spots, and you can look now at our qualified players list. You can see that Jesse's already been added to it alongside the 7 players that qualified previously during the year. So one of either Larry Fields or Scott Pulera will grab the second at-large invite in a few hours. Stick around and find out what happens. We'll be back.